My name is Trey Mangum, and this is Shadow and Act's Opening Act. Each week, we sit down with some of your favorite Black creatives in Hollywood to discuss how they made it in the entertainment industry. This week, we're sitting down with Kelvin Harrison Jr., known for his roles in some of the most cult classic indie films of the recent years, such as Luce and Waves. He can be seen soon in Netflix's Monster and will also be in the upcoming second season of Euphoria. We asked Kelvin about wanting to become an actor and how his parents being musicians may have impacted that decision.
I think I honestly thought I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to sing, but I wasn't that good at it per se. And my dad wanted me to play, but I didn't really understand it the way he did or appreciate it the way he did. Mm-hmm. I think it was me trying to find an artistic outlet that led me to acting because I think it's a few factors. I mean, we also were restricted in what we could watch. So what I was watching that wasn't blocked on the television was the Disney Channel. Mm. And then I was like, oh man, this is really fun. Like kids are doing music and they're laughing and it's wholesome and they're acting in these shows that make me laugh. And I was like, I want to do that. That led to me trying to do some school plays and that became more musical driven than it was like actual dramas or acting like that in any way. And so I thought that was like the happy medium to kind of be like, look, I'm still doing music, but I'm doing it the way I want to. And then it turned into my appreciation for like acting. So yeah.
It's interesting that you say that because you think that you didn't think that you were that good, but your work in The High Note and Godfather of Harlem begs to differ about that. So that's definitely interesting that you have that perspective.
I appreciate that.
What's the earliest on-screen credit of yours that you can remember, and how do you think that one role or moment has impacted the way that you approach your roles today?
It's everything offers something different. You know, the process changes every time. Right now I'm prepping and it's such a different thing than I used to do, but it's also, it's always evolving just like we do in life, you know? And I take pieces from every project. I guess the first time I actually had to prep for something like properly and not just prepping a scene, like, because in New Orleans, it's so hard to explain something. In New Orleans, like there was the Hollywood South. And so we were getting these like bit parts every now and then. And you had a local agent if you wanted to get into it, and you would get these auditions. And most of the acting classes aren't like real acting classes more than they are auditioning classes. So you can enroll in something, you'll learn how to self-tape, you'll learn how to break down a scene, which you can apply to anything. And I still use it the same way. But I think those tools I kind of gained from there didn't really open up what it meant to tell a whole story for 150 pages or a little bit less, you know? And I think when I did It Comes at Night, I was like, okay, now I have to figure out how do I sustain a film and a storyline and an arc for a character over this many pages. What does that mean? What I do? So I think that became like a huge, you know, pulling references and watching old movies and deciding, you know, I believe in stealing, you know, all I do is just watch movies and I kind of go, no one's going to watch that. No one's going to think I'm going to do that in this movie. So I'll watch it and I kind of go, these are my references. I'm putting it in my toolbox and I'm stealing. And I still do that to this day. And just do performances.
So I think, you know, we all remember you from It Comes at Night. You know, it's one of your first breakthrough roles. And I've told you this before about how in 2018, I said that was the year. In 2019, I did a piece saying that was the year. 2020, I did. And I think in 2021, it's going to be the same thing. But I like to point especially in 2019, because I know in 2019, we were blessed to have both Luce and Waves. And you... in this, like, I guess, like in your bag of like tortured teens in both of those movies. What is the hardest part about taking on characters that I guess have they're kind of like, it's not like either of these characters are heroes, maybe anti-heroes in some sense of the word, but or maybe even villain. But what is the way that you dive into these characters that are so complex and, you know, quite frankly, polarizing, probably?
It's the same thing, because the thing about it is I mean, everybody says this. You know, I don't really look at any of them and kind of go, oh, this is the type of guy I'm about to play, or this is the type of story that I'm about to do. I think things come to me, the scripts, and I read them and I kind of go, okay, do I have something to offer? Do I have something to say? Does it resonate with me? Does it pique my interest in any way based on what I've been reading or watching or living or seeing? And I think my process into it is always just like, well, what is the truth? And it's interesting now because I'm in the same kind of process of playing something within the realm of, you know, a young Black boy in existing in a world, you know, that doesn't necessarily isn't that inviting? And I think it's just trying to find the truth, trying to get to the nitty gritty and understand. It starts with the psychology of it all, you know, and like, okay, well, what are people trying to tell them? What are they trying to understand from it? What are they missing? How has evolution allowed them the space to maybe ignore certain things or maybe not have to deal with some of the older problems? And how do those older problems that maybe be beyond him come back to haunt him? And so the same kind of little things kind of exist, but it's all about unpacking myself and understanding who I am, why I exist the way I exist, what bothers me, what scares me, what brings me joy, what am I ignoring? What am I trying to run away from? You know, all these little things. And once I answer the questions for myself, I think I can start to break it down and then put on the colors and the layers of the person and dress them up pretty much. You know, we all dressed up to come across a certain way. And so the process of the character, they're all the same. They're all the same, you know?
So I imagine because we already know that you're so booked and busy, like you're always in a new role, a new project. And I'm assuming there are some that you know, that land on your desk and you read the script and sometimes, you know, that may not be necessarily the direction you want to go in. So are there any times where you come across a project and you're like, maybe there isn't much I can do with this? And how do you decide what to do and what not to do as an actor in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, now it's like if I read it and I kind of go, there's so many things. I mean, I always say there's so many things. There's so many factors that kind of play into it. Cause it's just like, okay, is this something that I've really done before? Or is this a slight evolution of what we've kind of been talking about? Cause I look at them as essays, you know, it's an essay to the public of my thoughts and my interpretation of life based through a character, through also looking at the other artists involved and what they contribute to it. Things change, you know, they may not necessarily seem like what they read like. And so you kind of have to kind of go, who's doing it, who's writing it, who's producing it, what studio is letting it out. I've learned these things over time. So if it comes to my desk now and I'm like, this doesn't do anything for me, or I don't think I don't believe in, I can't sit here and talk about this with anyone, or I don't necessarily know what the interpretation will be. What am I putting out into the world? Then it's a no. You know what I mean? If it excites me in some way, then I'll entertain it. We'll have a meeting and we'll see what happens from there. But it's I don't know. I don't really know how to like make it make sense, because it is a personal thing, you know, to choose to give yourself to a project for who knows how many months, you know?
Yeah. And you grinded on the indie circuit for several years. And, you know, even Monster, even though it's picked up by Netflix, you know, it's still an indie film. And since you've done so many, I guess, smaller budget and more modest projects, what's something that you take from those types of projects to apply when you're doing a, you know, either a bigger studio film or a bigger series that you learned during the process of, you know, being on the film festival circuit in the indies for so many years?
The thing that's different is that there's more money.
Yes.
And so you kind of have a little bit more to play with. I remember when Monster's interesting. Waves was interesting too. I think I always end up playing people too that have a very special skill, and and either it's a love for photography or they're a wrestler or, you know, the next baseball player.
There's something there.
But yeah, there's something there. You know, everyone has a gift. And I think the difference is like I would have to go and pay for my own training, and go and do it myself. And it's a lot of discipline kind of plays into that, and a lot of not knowing if you're doing it right. I think on the bigger movies, you have more time, you have more people to help you. But I think it also changes with your life too. I think the busier I've become, the more stressed I can get or more anxiety I have around the things. So I think the studio movies, lend towards balance in my life, less about the work, because the work kind of stays the same. Yeah. But I think in the indie space, it made more sense, and I could do it because I was young and I had that like hustler kind of vibe. I was like, coming out of New Orleans, I was just trying to make it work. So, but the prep stays the same. The conversations stay the same. The camaraderie between actors stays the same. My involvement may be a little less, I'm not necessarily like, with Monster, maybe not so much Monster, but Waves and Luce and certain projects like Monsters and Men. It was like, I really had a really close relationship with those directors. And so they asked me a lot about my opinion, about what it is that I think and who could possibly be, working with you in this space, and what does this look like, and can we change this? And I don't think that happens as much anymore. These directors, they've been hired for a reason, and it's, studio system controls it in the ways they do. Yeah. So I just come in, I become a working actor again, and that's cool. I love that.
This week's Black Entertainment Trivia Fact. Which of these actors is not from Chicago? Is it Bernie Mac, Debbie Morgan, Sherry Shepherd, or Jennifer Hudson? Find out the answer next week on ShadowNact.com.
I was so excited that Monster got picked up by Netflix. I felt like it had been so long ago when I first saw it, like 2018 in Sundance. And you just thinking about when that first premiered, that was before the world saw Waves, Luce, and everything else. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think it was as big as a gap as Monster, but I do know Monsters and Men was kind of like the same thing. It premiered, like by the time you shot it, it was a long time before the world actually saw that. So how does that work in, people seeing you in a role that you shot a very long time ago and you've done so much work in between that, but then when people are going to see it on Netflix, it's going to be like, oh, this is like a new thing, when some people are like, okay, this has been in the works for a while. As an actor, how do you reconcile with that sometimes? Because I know that's at least happened with kind of two of your projects so far, in people seeing them so much later than was probably anticipated.
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough because, we change so much. The world changes so much. We change. We learn so much more. I don't know. It's just to watch me at that time, and most people won't look at it like that. That's the thing too. And also the perspective and our take on the story also lend it to the time, I think. I would do it differently, probably. I would have different conversations around the story. I'd be a better actor now. You know what I mean? Like all of these things kind of play into having something come out like almost 5 years later. So I hope people, I hope what people see, I hope we have a different approach to how we view films, and we've also grown, and also we've also learned more on the subject matter that I guess this film kind of deals with. And because I think it's more specifically that. I think films coming out later, it doesn't really matter. If it's a comedy, who cares? Yeah. But I think when you're dealing with stories like these, I think it's challenging to you have to kind of keep in mind where it happened. I recently rewatched Imitation of Life. I've talked about that movie before because I watched it when I was a kid, and I rewatched it a couple nights ago, and I was like, wow, this is a wild movie in so many ways. Like, so many things are problematic about it, but at the same time, I still get where they were trying to go, and maybe it meant a lot in the 50s. You know what I mean? It is a powerful film for the time. and it also is a problematic film for the, if you think about the perspective of what they were actually trying to get across. You know, there's so many, there's so much. There's so much conditioning, brainwashing, and all these other elements that kind of play into why movies are made, what they're trying to say, who's making it. You can't really, sometimes you got to really comb through nonsense. But at the same time, you have to kind of keep in mind, though, what did this mean for that time? And so I think with Monster is, once again, it's like, what did that mean for 2016 when we shot it? You know, that's the perspective it was coming through. But most people might not look at it because they don't know that backstory. Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm really curious to see how it all unfolds, you know?
But, you know, even at the same time, it's still kind of bittersweet because in 2016, that would have been a film of the time, you know, coming off of Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin verdicts and cases and things like that. And then, you know, when it first got picked up by Netflix, it was still of the time, you know, we were still going through Black Lives Matter. And then even now, in this moment, you know, right when this film was going to be released, the George Floyd sentencing of Derek Chauvin and everything. And you realize, you know, even in these span of, it may seem like that's a long period of time, but things still have not changed. It's still as timely as it would have been had the film dropped in 2016 when it was shot, had it dropped in 2018 when it first premiered at Sundance. It's kind of bittersweet when you think about it. Like, things haven't changed, but it's still very topical, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It is very topical still. It's just, that's his own thing. Yeah. And
though you've played many a tortured teen in so many of your projects, you were able to do more comedic and romantic stuff in both The Photograph and The High Note. What is the most refreshing part about being able to, you know, like flip the switch from being like these darker characters and then having to be able to have so much fun in the other films that came out, both last year? You know, 2020 seems like so long ago, but both of those films did come out last year, and playing those characters as well.
It was nice. You know, I think that's the thing too. I mean, when I'm talking about Monster too, it's just like, you know, I love the idea that I got to be in The Photograph and got to be in a movie with Issa and Lakeith and Laurel and Tiana, and I think stuff like that, and The High Note with Tracy. I don't know. It's just it's fun. It's lighthearted, and I think it's exciting to be in those spaces because I think it takes a toll on me to do a lot of those movies. I think it can be repetitive at a certain point. I don't really know where the conversation is pushed moving at a certain point too. And so I think, and that's what I mean by in terms of just like, what are they? I mean, yes, it is still topical, you know, this movie, but it also is just like, but like, what's next? You know what I mean? Like, where else do we go with this? And so it is nice for me to be able to try to do different things so I don't feel like I'm hitting the same beat over and over and over and over. So yeah, I don't really know if I answered that question.
You did.
It's a balance. It's a balance of just doing things that just seem fun and doing things anything that feels good to me. If it made me laugh, fantastic, I'm down. If it made me cry, fantastic, I'm down. If it made me think, fantastic, I'm down. If it doesn't make me do any of those things, have a good one. You know?
Yeah. So. And you've also been taking on a lot more historical figures as well, from, you know, playing Fred Hampton in The Trial of Chicago 7, and then, you know, B.B. King in the upcoming Elvis film from Baz Luhrmann. Is that approach even any different? And when you get something like that comes across your desk, you're like, oh, wow, this may take... Do you think that's going to take a lot more work? Or is that more of like an excitement for you to like be able to dive into someone that you can actually put your own spin on a real life person as opposed to like crafting this character from scratch?
I'm actually starting to think I prefer it, you know? I think, you know, I like the process of like not having information at hand is very hard, I find, because then it really, I wouldn't look at myself as I don't have a big imagination. I'm not that creative. I'm more of I like facts, and I like books, and I like psychology and stuff like that. And so I think when I have all the source material, I can kind of dissect it and do my own research versus like when you just have a script and a character, then I have a harder time trying to be like, oh, and this could happen. You know, I'm not that guy. So I really do enjoy, like with BB, I had a really great time just listening to the music, trying to understand why the song was being made and why he sang it like that, and looking at the you know, the documentaries about him and looking at his interviews and understanding the mannerisms of this man too, and his, you know, and the passions he had for music, for women, and for, you know, a good time, for food, you know, all of it. It's just, it's fascinating also in trying to put it in a box of a specific time, because the task is always like, how do I take this person and place them in this story about this thing and make it make sense? Same with Fred, you know, how does Fred serve the larger portion of this story? Because it's not Fred's movie, obviously. But trying to honor him, have a spirit of his youth, have a spirit of his activism, his passion, his love, and taking these things and making, personalizing them, making them a part of me, and seeing what parts do we share, and then allowing that to turn its own thing as it kind of plays itself on camera. Because there were many moments with both of those guys, and that I was like, I would sit there and I'd have a little prayer and I'd be like, hey man, this is not gonna be you. I hope you're okay with that. It's going to be a representation of your spirit from my interpretation, because that's all it can be. You know, I'm playing an interpretation of Fred Hampton. I'm playing an interpretation of B.B. King that serves a story, because I'm a storyteller, and I think what we choose as an audience is up to us, how we want to take what we want to take away from that. So it isn't like a boom, 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 boom kind of thing. And I think that's something that took me a while to get to as well, because I really struggled with the imitation part of it, of trying to be like to the T and like, this is what it is. And I was like, it's, you know, I'll never be them. I'll never be them. But I could take a good whack at it, you know?
Yeah. And as you continue to take more and more high profile projects, people begin to, you know, recognize your face and recognize your name as the years go on. You know, I think there was a point that happened with, you know, Waves and Luce, and then there was another point last year. And then, you know, as the years goes on, it's going to continue to get more and more that way. How do you feel in regards to fame and, you know, not necessarily being famous per se, but, you know, people just associating with you being an actor? Do you feel like as time goes on, does that get more difficult, I guess, to reckon with the fact that you're in the public eye and people are going to, you know, have something to say about the role you did? They're going to have something to say about your performances, just anything in general. How does that work with you as time goes on and more people are like, oh, I know that's Kelvin Harrison Jr.?
Yeah, that's something I've been thinking about a lot. To be honest, it goes up and down. There's ebbs and flows. Sometimes I'm just like, okay, I'm fine with this. But I think it really depends on like where I'm at in my life. Like, have I curated a space where I feel safe, where I have balance, where I know I have my circle and my loved ones, and I know what's real. I think the thing about, I'm not interested in fame. I'm not interested in people. I'm not interested in hearing what people have to say about me. But the thing is there's certain, you can't really avoid it. And I'm really kind of trying to get comfortable with the fact that there is a version of me that is going to be on this box and this thing that will be on the internet at some point that people will want to interpret and say this, that, and the third about the performance, about why I did it and what this, that, you know, all of these things. And I can say a few words right now, but I don't really know how much that will mean. And then there's what I actually know is my truth. So I think, you know, I don't really know how I'll deal with it, but I think that's if I want to keep working, I guess, if I want to keep telling stories, which I love making movies and I love being a storyteller and I love being an artist, that brings me so much joy. Then I have to, I guess, find comfort in it all, you know? And but it's a strange thing, you know? It's a strange thing.
I love asking actors who are like in the 20 to 30 age demographic about playing teens a lot, because, you know, and you've played high school students and teenagers a lot. Is there a point now where you're like, oh, I would like to play, you know, more adult roles? And if not, do you see yourself getting to a point where you're thinking about wanting to do adult roles, or do you think, okay, I can, play high schoolers as long as I can? I mean, you have people like Bianca Lawson who played teenagers well into late 30s, early 40s. So I'm interested to see your perspective on that, given how much you've played high school students over the past few years. And, we talked a little bit about this last summer. I think it was last summer. Yeah, the high note about Euphoria, which people are super excited about. But that's one, a high school student, and two, like we said, going to be on a huge platform for you. But just in general, how do you feel about playing teenagers?
Yeah, I'm not gonna play teenagers anymore. I decided that during quarantine, and I'm not doing it. Another thing that I'm doing next, I'm playing a teenager. So I'm good on it. I just don't think I have anything to say anymore about that experience that is truthful, because I'm not living in the moment right now. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on Twitter. I'm trying to get off of Instagram. I respect and I appreciate, and I do identify with a lot of the things that the kids are experiencing right now. But the kid, but I can't say I'm 20, I'm 26, and I'm young. I know I'm young, but I'm not 17. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's a different thing, and I feel like I should respect that and let them do the job. Because I remember when I was young, I remember watching certain movies or shows, and I was like, why is this 30-year-old getting to play, what me? You know what I'm saying? Like, why wouldn't I get that part? Because I would lose parts when I was first started, and I was like, I would lose parts, and it would be like, why? Granted, I'm glad I didn't get some of those jobs, but I do think it's like when you're at that moment of your life, there's there's nuances that you kind of discover, and that things you're dealing with and things you're in conflict with that you can't really express yet, but that lends to the performance. There's certain things that it isn't just skill, it's just being in a pocket that just makes sense for you, and with the dialogue, with the storytelling. And if you start to kind of like manipulate that, then is it that truthful, and also the power of film is that we all sit there and receive it and watch it, and then we think that's the truth. Even if you can dissect it, your subconscious is being like, well, that's a little bit of truth. Movies are too powerful to be playing with them like that to me. I'm not messing with it.
It's interesting you say that, because I do feel like sometimes it feels like we're still stuck in this moment in time where I guess millennials were like the youngest generation. And now the divide between millennials and Gen Z when it comes to like certain topics, whether that's, just being on TikTok or whatever, it's just clear. And it's like, it's a distinct, group that should be represented on television. I think I think that kind of lends to a lot of confusion sometimes when it comes to people who are our age, being 15 and 16, which is, it's not to say that can't happen, but it's like, that's not something that you want to see represented on screen all the time, because eventually those people are going to get older too, and then it's like a trickle down domino effect when it comes to that.
Exactly.
And my final question is, you've been able to just ascend to so many heights the past few years. What's some advice that you would give to not even just actors, I'd say, but just aspiring creatives who are trying to make it in Hollywood? I know that this past year has kind of been a reset button for a lot of people. And, the industry is kind of like, reset a little bit, and things are different. Like, even the fact that we're talking on Zoom now is kind of indicative of that fact. So what would you give to people who are trying to, work on their craft to get where you are at some point?
I think the craft portion of it is so personal. I think if you are an artist or you're not an artist, and you can't become one because you haven't addressed the fact that maybe you just want to be famous. So if you are, you will always be one. If you want to work, you need to know your business. If you don't know the business of what this is, you don't know what you're selling, you don't know who you're working with, you're not going to work, You're not going to be able to protect your art and the thing that is so personal that you're giving to everybody, your gift. Those two go hand in hand. But people want to know about the craft and stuff like that. If you really love it, you're gonna figure that out on your own. You know what I mean? Yeah. And everybody has a different journey and what that means to them. Some people don't go to class. Some people do go to class. Some people like to talk to other people. Some people, you know, I don't know, whatever it is. It's just, it's his own thing. But in terms of just working and to have a career, what is a career? You know, it's knowing your business and offering a service. So I think that's just know your business and protect your gift.
Kelvin Harrison Jr. talked to us about playing so many tortured teens, about having fun with his recent comedy and romantic roles, and advice he'd give to aspiring actors who want to be where he is today. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Opening Act with Kelvin Harrison Jr. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. You can watch this interview in full and catch exclusive content on lunchtable.com. Create an account and watch Shadow and Act content such as Reel It Back and Shadow and Act Live. Until next time.